They say the past never dies. It just waits for the right storm to return. For veteran Ryan Cole, that storm came with fire betrayal and the cry of a girl named Lily. Together with a dog who knew only loyalty, they faced not just the cold, but the ghosts of what they'd lost. If stories of second chances and quiet heroism still move your heart, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from. Snow fell soundlessly across the Montana plains, blanketing the town of Pine Ridge in a white stillness so complete it felt sacred. The roads were muffled, the trees bent low beneath their frozen burdens, and the world seemed to hold its breath. Inside a small cabin on the outskirts of town, a single light glowed in the window, casting a dim halo onto the snowdrifts piled against the porch. Ryan Cole stood by that window, coffee cooling in his hands, eyes distant, as he watched the storm erase the tracks leading to his door. He had been counting the days again. Not since anything specific he'd stopped keeping anniversaries, but since the accident that never really ended. 2 years, 3 months, and 11 days since the brakes failed, since the truck spun on black ice, since the girl screamed. 2 years since her mother's voice turned into something brittle every time she saw him at the store. 2 years since he started talking, less sleeping, less feeling less. The only one who still spoke to him now didn't speak at all. Cooper, his German shepherd, lay near the fireplace, tail twitching in some dream of motion. Ryan glanced at him, and the edges of his hardened expression softened. "You don't hold grudges," he murmured. Cooper's ears flicked as if in answer. Outside, the storm deepened. He knew what that meant. The mountain pass would close by morning. Another few days cut off from town. For most people, that was inconvenience. For Ryan, it was mercy. He preferred silence. It was the only thing that didn't lie. He moved to toss another log into the fire when a sound broke through the wind. Soft, irregular. A knock. He frowned, setting the cup down. Another tap, then the faint rustle of paper. He opened the door. A wave of cold struck him in the face, slicing through the warmth inside. At his feet sat a small tin box, wrapped in red ribbon, half buried in snow. On top, a piece of paper folded neatly. His name. Ryan. The handwriting was messy, uneven like a child's. He didn't need to read the rest to know who it was from. Lily Parker. The girl with the blue knit hat and the metal crutch who lived 2 cabins down with her mother. The girl whose leg had been lost the night his truck skidded across the intersection. He had seen her only a handful of times since then, always from a distance. She didn't wave. She didn't glare either. She just looked at him like someone remembering a storm. He stared at the tin box, uncertain. "She shouldn't be out here," he muttered. He picked it up and brought it inside. The ribbon came undone too easily, as though tied in haste. Inside, nestled in wax paper, were sugar cookies shaped like stars. He hesitated, then shut the lid. "She shouldn't have," he said again, quieter this time. Cooper rose, curious nose pressing the box. "Don't even think about it," Ryan warned, but there was no bite in his tone. That night, sleep didn't come easy. The wind clawed at the roof. He dreamed of metal, screeching of headlights, spinning of a child's small hand pressed against shattered glass. When he woke, the fire had burned low, and Cooper was gone from the rug. He sat up sharply. "Cooper?" The door creaked open, and the dog padded in snow, clinging to his fur. In his mouth, he carried the same tin box, now empty. Ryan exhaled, torn between irritation and something dangerously close to laughter. "You ate them," he said. Cooper dropped the box, wagged his tail once, unapologetic. "You ate the kid's peace offering." Ryan rubbed a hand over his face. Hell, maybe that's for the best. But even as he said it, he didn't believe it. The next morning, when the storm finally eased, Ryan found a small shape outside the cabin again. A fresh tin, same ribbon, same shaky handwriting. Only this time, under her name, Lily had added a note. "If you don't like sweet ones, I can make ginger instead." Ryan stood there for a long while, reading the line over and over, until the ink blurred in his vision. Inside, Cooper barked, once tail thumping against the floorboards. The sound felt almost like approval. That night, Ryan didn't return the box. He set it beside the fire and shared the last cookie with Cooper. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something close. The next morning when he opened his door, the world outside seemed a little less silent. He didn't notice the small shadow watching from behind the pine trees, Lily bundled in her two big coats, smiling faintly as Cooper's bark echoed through the snow. The snow had barely melted when the first scent of smoke drifted across Pine Ridge. It was faint, almost imaginary, just a burnt whisper carried by the cold wind. Ryan noticed it the same way he noticed everything lately, with a soldier's reflex and a man's fatigue. He was fixing the fence when his phone buzzed against his thigh. "Cole," he answered, wiping the frost from the screen. It was Ethan Miles from the sheriff's office, his voice tight. "There's a small fire near the old quarry," Ethan said. "Probably a spark from hunter's gear, but I figured you'd want to know. That place was your patch, right?" Ryan's grip tightened around the phone. The quarry wasn't just an old job site. It was where he'd worked security for a defense contractor 5 years ago. Underground labs, coded systems, biometric locks, things he never asked too many questions about because asking meant remembering the uniform he swore off. "Yeah," Ryan said quietly. "I'll check it out." He ended the call before Ethan could protest. He told himself it was habit, not worry, that made him open the gun safe and check the battery on his field scanner. Cooper, sensing the shift in energy, trotted to the door tail, stiff eyes alert. "We're just looking," Ryan told him. "No heroes today." The drive took an hour through half-thawed roads that glistened like silver veins in the sunlight. The forest had lost its soft winter stillness, replaced by the acrid scent of char and wet bark. Smoke curled from the ridge, low and heavy. As Ryan stepped out, his boots sank into the blackened snow, crunching on frozen ash. He expected to see the fire crew, but the clearing was empty. No trucks, no hoses, only the distant hum of wind through trees. He followed the trail toward the old watch station, his breath visible in the frigid air. The metal cabin stood half-collapsed, its windows shattered. Inside, the control panel blinked faintly, a weak heartbeat in the dark. Ryan crouched and brushed the frost from the display. "No way," he whispered. The fire alarm logs had been disabled remotely. Whoever did it knew the old codes, the kind that were phased out after the unit disbanded. He typed the command override he still remembered from his army days. 22 D4 Echo. The screen flickered, then displayed the confirmation. "Override access granted." He leaned back slowly, the realization sinking in like cold through bone. This wasn't vandalism. It was intentional. The sequence had military formatting, encrypted with a clearance code higher than his own. Only someone from their old team could have done this. His breath fogged against the monitor as his thoughts spiraled backward to the unit, to the betrayal to the man he'd testified against. Calder. The name hit like a chill through his spine. Cooper barked suddenly outside, sharp and urgent. Ryan's heart jumped. He ran out, scanning the tree line, nothing but the hiss of the wind. But Cooper's body was tense, nose low to the ground, tail rigid. "What is it, boy?" Ryan murmured, but Cooper was already moving, bounding toward the road that cut through the forest. Ryan followed Boots, slipping over slick patches of soot and ice. At the base of the hill, he found tire tracks, fresh, deep, and fast. Fire trucks, maybe, or something heavier. He reached into his pocket for his phone, but there was no signal. "Come on," he said, heading back to the truck. The radio crackled as he started the engine. Static. Then a faint voice. Ethan's. "Ryan, do you copy? The fire's spreading. They evacuated the east trail near your cabin. You need to get back. Now. The cabin." The words hit like a punch. Lily's home was 2 doors down from his. "Evacuated?" Ryan asked, voice rising. "You sure everyone's out?" Static swallowed the answer. He didn't wait. The drive back, blurred headlights slicing through sheets of sleet. The closer he got, the thicker the smoke became. But when he reached the turnoff to his road, he saw no flames, only a strange orange glow flickering behind the tree line. He parked halfway up the path and stepped out. "Lily," he called, his breath clouding the night. No answer. Cooper sniffed the ground, then barked once, sprinting toward the woods. Ryan followed, slipping through branches slick with ice. The wind carried the distant wail of a siren, then another closer echoing off the valley walls. A fire truck moving too fast, no lights except that rotating red reflection that pulsed through the mist. For a moment, Ryan thought he saw a small figure by the roadside, a flash of blue knit hat, but when he called out, the siren drowned his voice. The truck roared past snow, spinning up in its wake, and the figure was gone. Ryan's gut twisted. He ran harder, calling her name. Cooper veered left, nose pressed to the snow, following a set of small tracks leading into the woods. They were uneven, pressed deep on one side, the tracks of someone walking with crutches. Lily Ryan shouted again, his voice raw. The tracks stopped near a fallen log where something glinted under the moonlight. A metal crutch snapped in half. His chest constricted. Cooper whined softly, pawing at the ground where the tracks ended. There were tire marks nearby, faint, but fresh, running parallel to the road where the fire truck had passed. He knelt and touched the grooves, then froze. The tread pattern wasn't standard for fire vehicles. It was military grade. He rose slowly, eyes scanning the dark tree line as realization began to take shape. Someone had been at the quarry. Someone who knew the codes. Someone who wanted him distracted long enough to take what mattered most. Cooper growled to head turned towards the valley, and Ryan felt it too, a presence distant yet deliberate. The cold no longer felt like weather. It felt like warning. He gripped the broken crutch in his hand, staring down the path where the tracks disappeared into blackness. The wind screamed through the valley that night, carrying with it the faint metallic scent of smoke and oil. Ryan drove blind into the storm headlights, barely cutting through the swirling snow. The broken crutch lay on the passenger seat, its aluminum frame clinking every time the truck jolted. Cooper sat upright in the back, alert and restless, whining softly, as if urging him to go faster. Ryan's hands clenched the steering wheel hard enough to turn his knuckles white. He kept replaying the tracks in his mind, the missing girl, the military tire marks. Every instinct screamed the same thing: this wasn't random. Someone had made it personal. He flicked on the radio, hoping for any signal from the sheriff's frequency. All he got was static until beneath the white noise, something faint pulsed a series of 3 short bursts, 2 long, 1 short. Not local police code. It was older, cleaner, unmistakable. Morse. His pulse quickened. That rhythm hadn't been used since his days with the 5th Recon Unit. He turned the dial, slowly adjusting for signal bleed, until the transmission sharpened. "Cole, if you're hearing this, don't come alone." A pause, then a weak crackle. "They're watching. Coordinates. 29 north, 11 west." The voice was faint, but he knew it. Ethan Miles. Ryan's stomach dropped. He slammed the truck into gear and tore down the snow-packed road toward the quarry's western ridge. The coordinates led to an old lumber warehouse, one that had been condemned years ago. The building loomed out of the storm like a ghost, its roof sagging under the weight of snow. The door hung half open, swaying with the wind. Ryan cut the engine, grabbed his flashlight, and nodded to Cooper. "Stay close." The dog slipped ahead, paws soundless on the ice. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of rust and gasoline. His light cut across the dusty floor, catching glimpses of old machinery and torn tarps. Then, in the corner movement, a man slumped against a support beam, wrists bound behind him with wire, his uniform dark with blood. Ethan Ryan breathed. He rushed forward, kneeling beside him. Ethan's face was pale, lips cracked, one eye swollen shut. Jesus, what happened? The younger man coughed, his breath shallow. "Took me from the station. 2 men, maybe 3. Moved like ghosts." He winced, fighting for breath. Called her. "He's back." The name hit Ryan like ice water. "That's impossible," he said, though he already knew it wasn't. "He's dead." Ethan shook his head weakly. "Not dead. Hidden. Built something. He said he'd start with you." Ryan's heart pounded so hard he could feel it in his throat. "Where's the girl?" Ethan's eyes fluttered open, glassy but sharp. "He took her because of you. Said she was your reminder. Said he wanted you to see what loss feels like." Ryan's breath caught. His chest felt like it was closing in. "Why? What does he want?" Ethan coughed again, a wet sound that made Ryan flinch. "He wants the codes. The ones from the old system. The ones you locked before you left. Ryan sat back on his heels, the pieces crashing together. The fire, the sabotage at the quarry, the military patterns. Calder wasn't just hunting him. He was reopening what Ryan had buried. He moved quickly, pulling a small multi-tool from his pocket to cut the wire around Ethan's wrists. "We're getting you out of here." Cooper stayed by the doorway, ears, flat eyes, fixed on something unseen in the dark. Ryan worked the wire, the edge biting into his fingers. Ethan groaned in pain, leaning forward as the last strand snapped. "Can you walk?" Ryan asked. Ethan nodded weakly. Ryan shifted to grab him under the arms, but Cooper barked, suddenly sharp. Loud, urgent. Ryan froze. "What is it?" The dog's bark turned to a growl, his body rigid. Ryan shone the flashlight down at the floorboards beneath Ethan's chair. For a second, he saw nothing. Then he saw it, a small metal disc pressed into the wood, almost invisible beneath the dust. A pressure mine. The kind used to secure perimeters in black ops fields. And Ethan was sitting right on top of it. Ryan's breath went still. He glanced up at Ethan, whose eyes widened in horror. "Move slow," Ryan whispered. "Don't shift your weight." Cooper whined low, backing away, tail tucked. Ryan's mind raced, calculating. The mine looked old, but well-maintained, the trigger light blinking faintly. It was rigged to detonate on release. That meant Ethan had triggered it when he was dumped there, and the only thing keeping them alive now was his weight. Ryan's hand trembled as he reached for the wire at the edge. They left it as a message. Ethan said, his voice barely a whisper. "He knew you'd come." Ryan swallowed hard. "Then let's prove him wrong." He found the arming pin still wedged near the fuse plate. Carefully, he pressed it back down, holding his breath. One wrong movement and the entire floor would vanish beneath them. Outside, the storm howled harder, shaking the walls. Cooper barked again, this time toward the open door. Ryan risked a glance and saw shadows moving beyond the tree line. 2, maybe 3 figures. Too steady, too coordinated to be rescuers. His heart hammered. "Ethan!" he whispered. "When I say move, we move together." The younger man nodded, sweat beading on his brow. Ryan tightened his grip on the pin. 3, 2... The sound of the storm outside was swallowed by the louder sound inside, the slow creak of floorboards under strain, and Ryan's pulse pounding in his ears. The mine beneath Ethan's chair ticked faintly, a mechanical heartbeat counting down their luck. Ryan's fingers trembled, the cold mixing with the sweat on his palms. He pressed the arming pin one last time, heard the faintest click, then exhaled. "Now," he whispered. He pulled Ethan up in one motion, shoving him clear of the beam and falling backward. The weight lifted, the floor groaned, and for half a second nothing happened. Then behind them, a low mechanical pop echoed, followed by the dull thud of a charge misfiring. The shockwave cracked the far wall, but didn't ignite. The bomb was old, maybe damaged by the cold. They were alive, but barely. Ethan's breathing came ragged and fast, his voice shaking. "We need to move before they come back." Ryan grabbed his arm, half dragging him toward the exit. Cooper led the way, barking sharply whenever the flashlight flickered. As they stepped into the open air, the storm had shifted from snow to sleet. Gray clouds hung low over the mountains, and the wind carried the faint wail of sirens in the distance. Help. Or so Ryan thought. He helped Ethan into the truck, slammed the door, and turned the key. The engine coughed, then started with a roar. "Hold on," Ryan said, flooring the accelerator. They drove down the winding road, the warehouse shrinking behind them into shadow. Ethan clutched his side, grimacing. "He planned this," he muttered. "He always plans everything." Ryan didn't answer. His mind was 1,000 miles away, or rather 10 years back in another desert under another kind of storm. He could still smell the oil fires, feel the grit under his tongue, hear Calder's voice barking orders through the dust. Captain Damon Calder had been larger than life back then, charismatic, fearless, the kind of man soldiers followed, even when orders didn't make sense. Ryan had followed him too, until he saw what lay under the bravado: stolen crates, falsified manifests, weapons rerouted from bases to black markets. When Ryan reported it, The fallout tore through their unit like shrapnel. Calder disappeared before the arrest came. 3 men died covering his escape. The last thing Calder said before vanishing was whispered through the static of a broken radio. "You stole my command, Cole. I'll take everything you ever care about." The memory burned through him now, more vivid than the cold. Cooper barked once, breaking the silence. Ryan's knuckles tightened on the wheel. "He's using the same playbook," he muttered, "burning everything he can't control." Ethan stared out the window, snow blurring past. "You think he's behind the fire?" "I don't think," Ryan said flatly. "I know." The sirens grew louder. A minute later, red and blue lights flared through the fog. 2 patrol SUVs blocked the road ahead doors open. Officers crouched behind them. Ryan slowed, lifting one hand off the wheel. Finally, he said, "They got the call." But the relief didn't reach his chest. The way the officers stood, weapons already drawn, wasn't right. The lead officer raised a megaphone. "Ryan Cole," the amplified voice boomed through the wind. "Step out of the vehicle with your hands visible." Ethan blinked. "What the hell?" Ryan frowned. "They must think I'm out of the vehicle," the voice repeated sharper. "Now!" Cooper growled, low ears back. "This is a mistake," Ethan said, reaching for his badge. But before he could open the door, the officer shouted again. "Put your weapon on the ground, Cole! We know about the explosives!" Ryan froze. His mind reeled. "Explosives? What are they?" Ethan's radio crackled on his belt and a voice cut through the static. "Suspect confirmed. Fire alarms at the quarry were bypassed from Cole's credentials. Data signature matches. Proceed with caution. That's impossible," Ryan said. "I didn't." But he stopped, because he knew who could. Calder, the codes. The old system he'd built and locked before resigning. Calder had found them, and he'd used them to turn the system against him. Ryan raised his hands slowly, stepping out into the freezing wind. The snow whipped across his face as 2 officers approached, rifles steady. "You've got the wrong guy," he said evenly. "Tell that to the evidence," one replied. They forced him to the ground, the metal cuffs biting into his wrists. Cooper barked furiously until another officer pointed a tranquilizer gun at him. "Don't!" Ryan shouted, struggling. "He's not a threat." The dart hissed past his shoulder, striking the snow. Cooper darted behind the truck, snarling but staying close. Ethan stumbled from the passenger seat, his voice hoarse. "Stop. He saved my life." "There's a bomb back there. It's Calder." The officers hesitated, uncertain. But then the radio spoke again, calm and authoritative. "Negative. Calder is deceased. Cole is our suspect. Bring him in." Ryan turned his head slowly towards the voice. That tone. That cadence. It was Calder's voice. Recorded, maybe distorted through the comms, but it was him. He'd infiltrated the frequency. Ryan's vision tunneled anger burning under his skin. "He's alive," he said quietly. "And he's coming." The officer shoved him forward towards the cruiser. Ethan tried to protest again, but was cut off when one of the officers grabbed his arm. "He's wounded, let him go," Ryan shouted, but his voice was drowned by the rising wind. The snow thickened, erasing the shapes of the trees. The road, everything. Cooper barked once, defiant, before vanishing into the storm's blur. Ryan caught one last glimpse of his tail disappearing into white. And for the first time in years, he felt something sharper than guilt, fear. The metal cuffs cut into Ryan's wrists as the cruiser jolted down the icy road. The storm had swallowed the world outside the windshield, streaked with snow that refused to melt. He stared at his reflection in the glass divider jaw, tight mind turning faster than the wheels beneath them. In the seat beside him, Ethan leaned against the window, pale and silent, still bleeding through his makeshift bandage. The officer driving spoke into his radio, his voice flat. "Transporting suspect Cole. ETA 20 minutes. Static answered him, followed by a brief crackle of another voice. Ryan froze. "Copy that," the reply said, faint but distinct. The voice wasn't dispatch. It was Calder. "Proceed west route, and do not stop. Let the fire clean up the rest." Ryan's heart slammed against his ribs. "Stop the car," he said. The officer frowned, glancing in the mirror. "Excuse me, stop the car?" Ryan repeated his tone, sharp as glass. Ethan looked up, confused. "Ryan, But before he could speak, Cooper appeared from the tree line, charging through the storm, his coat streaked with ice and soot. The dog leapt in front of the cruiser, barking wildly. The driver cursed and slammed the brakes. Tires screamed on black ice, and the vehicle skidded sideways, spinning until it slammed into a snowbank. The impact shattered the glass divider. Ryan lunged forward, smashing his shoulder into the door until the latch snapped. He kicked it open and tumbled into the snow. The cold bit through his skin instantly. Ethan stumbled out behind him, coughing. "You out of your mind?" Ryan grabbed the keys dangling from the ignition, unlocking his cuffs. "He's following us." That wasn't dispatch. "Calder's running the comms." What Ethan's voice cracked. "You're saying he's inside the system?" Ryan didn't answer. He just grabbed his rifle from the cruiser's trunk and checked the magazine. "He's in everything." The snow howled around them, thick as smoke. Cooper barked once and darted into the forest, glancing back as if to say, "Follow me." Ryan didn't hesitate. He helped Ethan to his feet, and they plunged into the trees. Branches whipped their faces, ice crunching underfoot. Every breath burned like glass in their lungs. The forest was a maze of shadows and snow, the world reduced to white and black. Cooper led them through it like he'd done 100 times in training, nose low, moving with purpose. "He's tracking something," Ryan muttered. Ethan glanced at him. "You think it's Lily?" Ryan's throat tightened. "I don't think. I hope." They trudged for nearly an hour, their bodies numb, until the trees opened to a clearing. Smoke still hung low, the air thick with the bitter stench of burned metal. The fire at the quarry had long died, but the earth still steamed blackened and scarred. Ryan knelt, scanning the ground. Cooper sniffed at the edges of the crater, whining. There were tracks, small ones pressed deep, the imprint of a crutch visible in one. "She was here," Ryan whispered. His hand shook slightly as he traced the edge of the print, but his relief died when he saw the direction they led. Not away from the fire. Back toward it. "No," he breathed. "That doesn't make sense." Ethan limped closer. Maybe she was running from someone. Ryan shook his head. "No, look. The stride she wasn't running. She was going willingly." He looked toward the collapsed tunnel ahead, the old mine entrance still glowing faintly with heat. The snow around it was melted into gray slush. She went back in. Ethan stared at him like he'd lost his mind. "Why would she do that?" "Because she thought I was in there," Ryan said quietly. The words hit him harder than the wind. Cooper growled, pacing near the entrance. Ryan stood moving closer. The air shimmered with residual heat, and the ground trembled underfoot. "Careful," Ethan warned. "The structure's unstable." Ryan ignored him. He crouched by the tunnel mouth and brushed away the soot. Something caught his eye. A small blue thread snagged on a piece of rebar. It was the same color as Lily's knit hat. His heart pounded in his throat. "She's here." Ethan knelt beside him, his breath visible in the cold. "That tunnel's a death trap." "She's still in there!" Ryan snapped. He started forward, but Cooper barked suddenly and lunged toward the side of the slope, digging furiously in the snow. Ryan froze. "What is it, boy?" The dog didn't stop. He clawed at the ground, growling low, snow flying in bursts. Ryan joined him, scraping with his gloved hands, until he hit something hard metal, cold, slick with oil. The smell hit him first, diesel. His stomach dropped. "It's rigged," he whispered. "The whole entrance, it's wired to blow." Ethan's eyes widened. "Ryan, stop." But the words came too late. A deep rumble rolled beneath them, a vibration that climbed from the earth into their bones. Ryan grabbed Cooper by the collar and pulled him back just as the hillside erupted in a flash of light and thunder. The explosion tore the ground apart, throwing them backward into the snow. The world went white, then black, then silent. When Ryan came to, his ears rang, and his body ached all over. He blinked against the falling ash, forcing himself to his knees. The tunnel was gone. In its place was a smoking crater, the ground split open like a wound. "Ethan," he shouted, voice hoarse. The younger man stirred a few feet away, dazed but alive. Cooper was already up, limping but relentless. He returned to the crater and began to dig again, ignoring the heat, the smoke, everything. Ryan stumbled after him. "Stop, boy, it's no use." But then he saw it. Amid the melted snow under the debris, a patch of fabric moved, faintly. Blue, oh God. He dropped to his knees and dug with his bare hands. The cold bit through his skin, but he didn't stop. Cooper clawed beside him, whimpering. The more they dug, the stronger the scent of oil and burned wood became, until finally under a layer of charred boards they found her. Lily. She was alive. Her face streaked with soot, her eyes barely open. She gasped weakly, her voice breaking. "Ryan, I thought you were still in there." His breath caught. "I'm here. You're safe." But as he looked around, he saw the tunnel walls shifting again, the ground trembling with the aftershock of the blast. Cooper barked furiously, pressing his body against Lily's side to shield her. Ethan shouted something Ryan couldn't hear, pointing toward the ridge. Another explosion echoed from deeper inside the quarry, closer this time, and Ryan realized the fire hadn't finished what it started. It was coming back for them. The second explosion rolled through the valley like thunder trapped in stone. The shockwave knocked Ryan backward, snow and ash swirling around him in a suffocating haze. He covered Lily with his body, shielding her from the falling debris, until the rumble faded into silence. For a long moment, there was nothing but the sound of his heartbeat and the faint whimpering of Cooper beside them. When he finally lifted his head, the air was thick with smoke and dust glowing faintly orange from the burning wreckage deeper in the pit. "Lily," he said softly, shaking her shoulder. Her eyes fluttered open, dazed lashes caked with ash. "Can you hear me?" She nodded weakly. Ryan exhaled a shaky breath of relief, pulling her closer. Her small hands clung to his coat, trembling. "It's okay," he whispered. "You're safe now. I've got you." But when she finally spoke, her voice was so faint he almost missed it. He said, "You killed them." Ryan froze. What her eyes were half closed, her voice uneven. "The man with the gray beard. He said you killed people, that's why you hide." The words hit him harder than the blast. For a second he couldn't breathe. His body went still, every muscle tightening as though the cold had reached inside him. Cooper whined softly, pressing his muzzle against Ryan's arm, but it didn't ground him. His mind spun backward through sand and fire to the convoy, the screams, the smell of burning rubber. "He said you killed your own men." Lily murmured again, tears cutting tracks through the soot on her cheeks. "But he said it wasn't your fault. He said they made you do it." Ryan's grip loosened. His hands trembled as his truth rose like bile in his throat. He had tried so hard to bury it, but Calder had dug it up again. "Lily," he whispered, voice breaking. "I didn't mean for anyone to die." She blinked slowly, not understanding, and that hurt even more. Ethan stumbled toward them through the smoke, limping badly but alive. "We have to move," he said, coughing. "That blast destabilized the ridge. This whole place could go." Ryan didn't answer. He couldn't. His eyes were locked on Lily, who clung to Cooper, now her small body shaking. Ethan knelt beside them, grimacing. "Is she hurt?" "No," Ryan said hollowly. "Just scared." Ethan followed his gaze and saw the look on Ryan's face. "What happened?" Ryan shook his head. "She knows. Calder told her. Told her what? That I killed them. The men, the civilians, all of it." Ethan's brow furrowed. "Ryan, that's not... Don't!" Ryan snapped his voice, sharp, raw. "You weren't there." He ran a hand through his hair, smearing soot across his face. "We were ordered to clear a supply line in Kandahar. Intel said the convoy was hostile." "It wasn't. It was a refugee truck. Families." He swallowed hard, the words trembling out. "I called it in, begged Calder to abort, but he said the order stood. We fired. By the time I reached the wreckage, it was already burning." Ethan's face went pale. Jesus. "And when the investigation started," Ryan continued, "he made sure my name was the one on the report. Said I'd acted without clearance." He laughed bitterly. He was the one pulling the strings. I just followed the command chain. And now he's using it again, twisting it into something I can't run from. For a moment, the only sound was the wind howling through the crater. Ethan looked away, jaw tight. "He's not doing this for revenge," he said finally. "He's doing it for access." Ryan frowned. Access to what? The vault, Ethan said, his tone heavy. The one under the quarry. You built its security grid. Remember, Calder doesn't care about you. He wants the data inside. Classified satellite schematics, military contracts, prototypes, everything worth billions in the wrong hands. Ryan stared at him, the realization slow but crushing. You're saying this isn't about me? Ethan met his eyes. Oh, it's about you. You're the only one who can open it. Ryan shook his head. That system was sealed when the contractor shut down. The access codes were wiped. Not all of them, Ethan said. You left a failsafe. You said it was in case of emergency. Ryan felt his stomach twist. He had. He'd hidden a recovery key inside the emergency override file, but that was supposed to be gone with the servers. Unless Calder had found them. He's using her to get to me, Ryan muttered. She was bait. Ethan nodded grimly. He knew you'd come for her. He's still down there under the secondary tunnels. That's where the signal interference is strongest. Ryan's hands curled into fists. The idea that Calder had used Lily had filled her head with lies just to draw him out, made something inside him snap. Cooper barked once as if echoing his fury. We can't go through the main entrance, Ethan said. It's gone. There's an old ventilation shaft behind the ridge. Maybe we can get in that way. Ryan looked down at Lily, who had fallen asleep against his chest, her breathing shallow but steady. I'm not risking her again, he said quietly. You won't have to, Ethan replied. I'll take her back to the truck. You go after him. Ryan shook his head. You're in no shape to, neither are you. Ethan cut in his tone hard. But we don't have a choice. The ground rumbled again beneath their feet. A plume of smoke rose from the ridge, black against the white snow. Ryan looked at it, then at the sleeping girl, then back at Ethan. For the first time in years, he felt something close to clarity. The past was no longer something to hide from. It was standing in front of him, waiting to be faced. He stood slowly, cradling Lily in his arms. If I don't come back, he said, get her out. Tell her the truth. Ethan nodded once. The real one, not his. Ryan met his eyes. That's the only kind that matters. Cooper barked again, louder this time, turning toward the ridge where the smoke was thickest. Ryan followed his gaze, the old soldier in him rising from the ashes of the man who had tried to disappear. The snow around them was melting into gray water, the air heavy with the scent of oil and iron. Somewhere beneath that smoke, Calder was waiting. And Ryan was done running. The sky had turned the color of rust by the time they reached the ridge. Smoke still coiled lazily upward from the crater, staining the snow in dark streaks. The air was bitter with the smell of fuel and scorched earth. Ryan held Lily close against his chest, her head tucked under his chin, her breath warm but uneven. Every step sent pain radiating through his ribs, but he kept moving. Behind him, Ethan limped with the rifle slung over his shoulder, scanning the tree line. The truck's a half-mile east, Ethan said. Once you're there, follow the creek until you hit the old highway. You'll find a ranger post. Ryan shook his head. You're not going back in alone. I'm not, Ethan said, meeting his eyes. You are. Ryan opened his mouth to argue, but Cooper growled. Suddenly, ears pricked. The hairs along his spine rose, his body tense. What is it, boy? Ryan whispered. The answer came in the next second. A gunshot cracked through the air, slicing the silence in half. Ryan dropped instinctively, curling around Lily, as the bullet tore into the snow beside them. Another shot followed, then another. Ethan fired back blindly into the trees. They're flanking us, he shouted. Ryan pressed Lily's face into his chest. Stay down. Cooper barked furiously, then launched himself forward, a streak of motion vanishing into the storm. Cooper, Ryan yelled, but the wind swallowed his voice. The world dissolved into chaos, the sound of gunfire, the metallic hiss of bullets cutting through branches, the smell of cordite and pine. Ryan pulled Lily behind a fallen log, his heart pounding. Ethan crawled beside him, reloading with shaking hands. They're trying to cut us off from the truck. No, Ryan said grimly. They're trying to draw me out. Then from somewhere ahead, a single, sharp yelp pierced the noise. It was short, strangled, and it silenced everything inside him. No, Ryan breathed. He peeked over the log and saw him. Cooper lay in the snow 30 feet ahead, one paw twitching, blood spreading beneath his flank. Lily's small voice trembled behind him. "Ryan, he's hurt." "Stay here," he said, already moving. "Don't move until I come back." Ethan grabbed his arm. "Ryan, it's a trap. I don't care." He sprinted through the snow, heart in his throat. The cold bit into his face, but he didn't feel it. Cooper tried to lift his head when Ryan reached him, his eyes clouded with pain, but still alert. "Easy, buddy," Ryan whispered, pressing his hand to the wound. The bullet had gone through. Shallow, maybe survivable, but only if he stopped the bleeding now. Behind him, Lily's cry echoed faintly through the storm. Then another voice, deeper, cold as iron. "Still loyal to the dog, are you?" Ryan froze. He turned slowly, and through the falling snow a figure stepped forward, tall, broad-shouldered face half-shadowed by a hood. Calder. His beard was silver now, but the eyes were the same, sharp, calculating, empty. He held a rifle loosely at his side, the posture of a man who didn't need to aim twice. "You never learned," Cole Calder said softly. "You still choose weakness." Ryan rose slowly, blood on his gloves. "Where is she?" Calder smiled. "Safe, for now. You'll see her soon enough." Ryan's jaw clenched. "If you hurt her—" "Don't insult me," Calder said. "You think I want to kill a child? She's leverage. You, on the other hand—" He tilted his head. "You've been a thorn in my side for years. I tried to destroy your name, but the public loves a redemption story, so I'll give them one." He raised a small device, a camera drone, its red light blinking. "This time you'll confess." Ryan's stomach dropped. "You're broadcasting," Liv Calder said. "To your friends at the precinct, to the agencies that abandoned you, to anyone still naive enough to believe in you." He smiled faintly. "It's poetic." Before Ryan could move, something hard struck the back of his skull. Darkness flooded his vision. When he came to the world was dim and metallic. The air smelled of oil and dust. He was tied to a steel chair, his wrists raw from the cable binding them. The room around him was lit by flood lamps, the walls lined with old mining equipment and half-melted computer terminals. Calder stood a few feet away, watching a row of monitors. On the screens, Ryan saw his own face, filmed from different angles, his bloodied expression, his trembling hands. A title scrolled across the bottom of one feed: "Former military contractor confesses to domestic sabotage." Another monitor showed Ethan bound, and on his knees, a man in a mask standing behind him with a knife pressed to his throat. Ryan's heart seized. "Stop it!" Calder turned his expression calm. "You wanted to be a hero. Heroes bleed first. He has nothing to do with this," Ryan said. "Let him go." "Oh, but he does," Calder replied. "He's your witness. Every story needs one. And I intend to make sure his last words confirm what the world already believes, that Ryan Cole betrayed his country." Ethan raised his head weakly, blood streaking his temple. "Don't give him anything," he rasped. Calder's jaw tightened, a flicker of irritation breaking through his composure. "You always surrounded yourself with stubborn fools," he said. "The girl, the cop, the dog. You think loyalty redeems you, but all it does is slow you down." He crouched in front of Ryan, voice low. "You ruined my command, my reputation, my life. Now I'll take yours apart piece by piece, until the world sees what I always saw, a coward hiding behind excuses." Ryan stared at him, forcing the tremor out of his voice. "You taught me how to follow orders. You never taught me how to stop doing the right thing." Calder's smile was small, almost pitying. "That's where you went wrong." He turned toward one of the screens and pressed a button. Ethan's scream echoed through the chamber, raw and guttural. Ryan jerked against the restraints, fury rising like fire in his chest. Enough Calder didn't even look at him. "Confess," he said. "Say it and I'll stop." Ryan's voice cracked. "You'll kill him either way." Calder paused, then smiled again. "You always were perceptive." The room smelled of oil, iron, and fear. Ryan's wrists bled where the steel cable bit into his skin, his breath coming out in ragged bursts. Every sound was sharper now, the faint drip of melting ice from the rafters, the hum of the generator, Ethan's choked breathing somewhere behind him. Calder paced slowly across the concrete floor, the soles of his boots echoing against the hollow walls. You know, he said conversationally, I used to think you were different. You followed orders. You believed in the chain of command. You were useful. But guilt makes men unpredictable. He stopped and leaned close, his breath hot against Ryan's ear. That's what makes you dangerous, Cole. Not your training, your conscience. Ryan's jaw clenched. He could feel the heat of the floodlights against his face, the faint vibration of the broadcast drones circling overhead. Somewhere above a blizzard raged a white curtain cutting off satellites' cameras and whatever help might have existed. Calder didn't realize that the same storm that made him invisible to the world was about to hide something else, too. Ryan lowered his gaze, feigning defeat. You want me to confess, fine, but you'll have to untie me to make it convincing. Calder chuckled, still trying to buy time. He turned away, signaling to one of his men. Make sure he stays alive until I finish uploading the footage. The guard nodded and stepped out. As soon as Calder's back was turned, Ryan shifted his hands, twisting his wrists sharply. The steel bit deeper, drawing more blood, but he didn't care. Pain was familiar. Pain was a language he understood. He looked toward Ethan, whose face was pale, his body slumped forward but his eyes still burning with life. Stay awake, Ryan whispered. Ethan coughed weakly. You have a plan. Working on it. Ryan's gaze flicked toward the far corner of the room where a small ventilation grate rattled in the wind. The blizzard outside was growing worse, the sound of it bleeding into the base through every crack. The storm was their only ally now. Miles away in the shadow of the forest, a faint light blinked in the snow. It was small, weak, but rhythmic. ... dash 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 ... A distress code. The static from the storm carried it farther than it should have, bouncing off the mountain ridges. Inside a rescue station 20 miles away, a retired communications officer paused over his headset, frowning. Code Sierra 4, he murmured. That's one of ours. He turned the dial, amplifying the frequency. Who's transmitting? The reply came through the hiss of static, a trembling young voice. This is Lily Parker. I need help. They took Mr. Cole. He's in the mine. Please. The officer's eyes widened. He grabbed the receiver and shouted toward the hangar. Get the chopper ready. Back in the base. Calder frowned at the monitors. The storm's interference was worsening, static crawling across the screens. Signal integrity dropping, one of his techs said nervously. We're losing uplink. Calder slammed his fist against the console. No, not now. Ryan caught the flicker of panic in his expression and felt something cold shift inside him, a spark of control. What's wrong? He said hoarsely. Weather not part of your plan? Calder glared at him. Shut up! But Ryan smiled faintly, blood dripping from his wrists. That's the problem with control. It doesn't last. A sudden gust rattled the ceiling and the power flickered. The lights dimmed for a moment, plunging the room into darkness before humming back to life. But that moment was enough. Ryan shifted his hands again, twisting the cable until one of the bolts snapped loose. He inhaled sharply as his right wrist slipped free. Ethan, he hissed. The younger man lifted his head, dazed. You still got that knife on your belt? Ethan's cracked lips curved into something like a smile. Always. Ryan crawled toward him, keeping his movements small, quiet. Calder was shouting orders to the tech crew, too distracted to notice. The generator, one of the men said. It's overheating. Then fix it, Calder barked. We lose the feed, we lose everything. Ryan reached Ethan's side and grabbed the knife handle with his bound hand, yanking it free. The blade was dull but solid. He pressed it against the remaining cable and began to saw. Every stroke burned. Sparks danced across the monitors as the storm outside intensified. Snow battered the metal walls, and the wind howled like a living thing. He's in the system, one of the techs shouted suddenly. Someone's broadcasting on our frequency. Calder turned sharply. What a repeating distress code. Sierra 4, it's pinging our coordinates. Calder's face drained of color. Who sent it? We don't know, sir. It's... A loud crack interrupted him, the sound of metal giving way. Ryan tore free from the chair and lunged forward, slamming his shoulder into the nearest guard. The man went down hard, his rifle clattering across the floor. Ryan grabbed it and fired twice the recoil, kicking against his bruised ribs. One bullet shattered a monitor, another took down the second guard. Ethan struggled to his feet, catching the knife Ryan tossed to him. "Time to move," Ryan said. Calder backed toward the far door, fury twisting his face. "You think this ends with you, Cole? You're just another ghost." Ryan leveled the rifle at him. "Then let's haunt each other." Calder turned and ran. Ryan fired, hitting the generator instead. Flames erupted instantly, spreading across the room as sparks caught the oil-soaked floor. Smoke filled the air, black and choking. "Go!" Ryan shouted, grabbing Ethan's arm. They stumbled through the corridors, following the sound of the storm outside. Behind them, the base was burning, the heat chasing them through every passage. "This way," Ethan shouted, pointing toward a tunnel where snow blew through a cracked door. Ryan shoved it open, the cold slamming into them like a wall. They staggered out into the open, just as a wave of fire burst from the tunnel behind them, lighting up the storm. Calder stumbled into the snow a few yards away, his coat on fire, his face twisted in rage. Ryan raised the rifle, but before he could fire, Calder's voice cut through the wind. "You can't kill me, Cole. You already did once." The snow whirled around them, flames licking the sky, two silhouettes locked between fire and white silence. In the distance, the faint whir of helicopter blades began to echo through the storm. The snow was no longer falling. It was simply suspended in the air, glowing in the orange wash of the burning camp behind them. The fire crackled against the roar of the storm, an unholy mix of heat and frost colliding, painting the mountainside in violent light. Ryan stood in the center of it all, his chest heaving, rifle trembling in his hands as he faced Calder. The older man's coat was half-burned, smoke curling from his shoulders, but his voice still carried the same quiet authority it always had. "You think this makes you a hero?" Calder rasped. "Burning what you don't understand, you're no different from me." Ryan's eyes burned, but his voice was steady. "I never wanted to be a hero." Calder sneered. "And yet here you are!" His hand twitched toward his pistol. Ryan didn't hesitate. The rifle's report cracked like thunder. Calder staggered backward, surprise flashing across his face. He fell into the snow, the red spilling beneath him, stark against the white. For a long moment, nothing moved. The storm seemed to pause, as if waiting for something sacred to pass between them. Ryan lowered the rifle, his hands shaking. Calder's lips moved one last time, forming a word Ryan couldn't hear, then went still. The firelight flickered across his lifeless eyes, then faded. Ryan exhaled his breath, fogging in the freezing air. He turned slowly, the weight of what had just happened sinking into his bones. The wind picked up again, carrying the faint sound of rotor blades. The rescue team was close. He could see the searchlight sweeping through the forest beyond the ridge, its beam cutting through the smoke. Ethan Ryan shouted, voice hoarse. The younger man appeared from behind a collapsed wall, limping but alive, his uniform torn and streaked with ash. "You did it," Ethan said, coughing. "He's done." Ryan didn't answer. His gaze had fixed on something lying in the snow a few yards away. Cooper. The dog's fur was matted with blood, his breathing shallow, each rise and fall weaker than the last. Ryan dropped to his knees beside him. No. Hey, stay with me, buddy." Cooper's tail twitched once, barely a motion. His amber eyes lifted to meet Ryan's. There was trust there, and peace, as if he already knew what Ryan couldn't say aloud. Ryan pressed his palm against the dog's chest, feeling the faint, faltering heartbeat beneath. "We're home, buddy," he whispered. "You hear me? We're home." The snow fell quietly, now soft flakes landing on Cooper's fur, melting instantly. The dog gave a small sigh, a sound almost human in its gentleness. Then his chest stilled. Ryan bowed his head, his throat closing. The world narrowed until all he could hear was the faint hum of the helicopter overhead and the beating of his own heart. Ethan placed a hand on his shoulder but said nothing. There was nothing to say. The searchlight swept over them, and voices shouted through the wind. Rescue workers in bright orange parkas descended the slope, their radios crackling. "We've got 2 survivors," one called, and a K9. Ryan didn't move. It took 2 men to lift him to his feet. "Sir, we need to get you aboard," one of them. said shouting over the rotors. Ryan nodded numbly, his eyes never leaving Cooper's still form until they were forced to pull him away. The air around the helicopter was chaos, snow whipping sideways heat from the engine mixing with the bitter cold. Ryan climbed aboard last, collapsing into the seat beside Ethan. Across from him, bundled in a silver blanket, sat Lily. She looked small, pale, her hair tangled with ash and frost, but when she saw him, her lips trembled into a fragile smile. "You came back," she whispered. Ryan tried to answer, but his voice broke. He just reached across the gap and touched her hand. It was warm, alive. And then he saw what she was holding. In her tiny fist half hidden beneath the blanket was his old military dog tag. The metal was scratched bent and smeared with something dark blood. Cooper's blood. Ryan's breath caught. "Where did you get that?" he asked softly. Lily looked down at it, her eyes glistening. "Cooper had it. It was around his collar. I think he wanted you to have it back." Ryan swallowed hard, his vision blurring. The tag felt heavy, heavier than it ever had in his years of service. He turned it over in his hand, reading the faded engraving, "Cole Ryan J., United States Army. O positive?" The words blurred behind tears he refused to let fall. "He kept it all this time," he whispered. Lily leaned against him, her voice barely audible. "He never forgot you." The helicopter lifted off the vibration, thrumming through the floor. Through the window, Ryan could see the inferno below, shrinking into a single red glow against the endless white. The camp, the fire, the ghosts, they were all vanishing into the snow. But the ache inside him didn't. Ethan sat across from him, arm in a sling, staring out into the storm. "You did what you had to," he said quietly. "Doesn't feel like enough," Ryan murmured. "It never does." For a while, no one spoke. The only sound was the rotor's rhythmic thunder and the faint crackle of the radio as the pilot relayed coordinates. "ETA 15 minutes to Helena," the voice said. Ryan closed his eyes. His mind drifted to the cabin, to the quiet mornings by the fire, to the sound of Cooper's paws pacing across the floor. He saw Lily's little red ribbon on his porch, the one she'd tied around the cookie tin months ago. He realized then that redemption doesn't come clean. It comes in fragments, small acts, quiet courage, the kind you bleed for. The helicopter jolted slightly as it rose higher, clearing the mountain ridge. Ryan opened his eyes again and looked down. Through the swirling snow, he could see the faint outline of Cooper's body below, already half covered in white, as if the earth itself was tucking him in. He pressed the dog tag to his lips. "Goodbye, buddy." The storm howled louder outside, but inside the cabin of the chopper, a fragile silence settled. A silence that for the first time in years didn't feel like punishment. The hospital room was quiet, except for the steady beeping of the monitors and the rhythmic patter of rain against the window. Outside, the storm had finally broken, leaving behind a cold, gray morning. Ryan sat in the corner, one arm in a sling, his eyes fixed on the news feed playing on the muted television across the room. The headline scrolled slowly across the bottom of the screen: former military officer Damon Calder in federal custody following domestic terrorism charges. The image cut to a stretcher being wheeled through a hospital corridor, Calder's face pale and hollow under the fluorescent lights. 2 federal agents walked beside him, their expressions grim. The report said he had survived the firefight long enough to be captured, but not long enough to escape justice. Ryan's jaw tightened. There was no satisfaction in it, only an exhausted kind of peace. Ethan stood near the foot of the bed, his shoulder heavily bandaged, giving his statement to the agent taking notes. "Everything's in the data files recovered from the vault," Ethan said. "Cole wasn't the traitor. He was the one who stopped Calder's operation 10 years ago. The evidence proves it: shipping records, coded transactions, internal comms." Calder framed him to cover the trafficking routes. The agent nodded, closing his folder. "We'll make sure the record's corrected." He left quietly, the door clicking shut behind him. Ethan turned toward Ryan, a faint smile crossing his tired face. "You're officially cleared. Took a decade, but the truth's finally louder than the lies." Ryan let out a breath that felt like it had been trapped in his chest for years. Doesn't change what happened. No, Ethan agreed softly, but it changes what happens next. Ryan nodded slowly. His eyes drifted back to the window where the rain had turned to snow again, thin flakes floating gently past the glass. You ever think some storms don't come to destroy us? He murmured, but to wash away what needed to go. Ethan chuckled. That sounds like something Cooper would believe. Ryan smiled faintly. He believed in everything good, even when I didn't. For a moment, neither man spoke. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was full of things they didn't need to say. When the nurse came in, Lily was with her. She had a new prosthetic now, sleek and silver with small flower engravings etched along the metal. She moved carefully but proudly, clutching a small stuffed dog in one hand. When she saw Ryan, her face lit up. You're awake, she said, her voice bright but trembling. He opened his good arm to her, and she ran into it without hesitation. Hey, kiddo, he whispered. You scared me. She looked up at him, eyes wide. I wasn't scared. Cooper told me you'd come. His throat tightened. Yeah, he said softly. He always knew better than I did. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the old dog tag, now cleaned and polished, hanging on a thin silver chain. They fixed it, she said, so you can wear it again. Ryan took it, his hand trembling slightly as he slipped it over his head. The cold metal rested against his chest, right over his heart. Thank you, he said. You kept it safe. Lily smiled. I promised him I would. Months passed. Winter gave way to spring, and the mountains of Montana began to thaw. The snow receded from the fields, revealing patches of green that stretched towards the horizon. In a clearing not far from Pine Ridge, workers erected a wooden sign above a freshly painted barn. It read, Cooper's Promise K, 9, Rescue and Training Center. Ryan stood beneath it, hands in his jacket pockets, the wind ruffling his hair. Ethan walked up beside him, still favoring his injured leg, but smiling. Didn't think I'd see you back in uniform again, he said, nodding toward the patch on Ryan's sleeve, an insignia shaped like a paw print. It's not a uniform, Ryan said. It's a reminder of what that even broken things can save lives. Beyond them, the sound of barking filled the air. In the training yard, a half-dozen German shepherd puppies tumbled over one another in the grass tails wagging. Lily knelt among them, laughing as one tried to climb her leg. She wore a bright red jacket, her new prosthetic gleaming in the sun. Ryan watched her for a long moment, his chest tight, in a way that wasn't pain this time, but pride. One of the pups broke away and ran toward him, clumsy but determined. Ryan crouched, catching it gently. The pup licked his hand, tiny tail, whipping back and forth. Looks like he likes you, Ethan said. Yeah, Ryan murmured. Maybe he knows. Knows whose promise this place was built on. He looked out across the field where Lily ran with the pups, her laughter carrying through the crisp air. Cooper's? Ethan's smile softened. You know not everyone gets a second chance. Ryan nodded. I didn't. He did. A light breeze swept through the valley, bending the tall grass, carrying with it the faint scent of pine and rain. For the first time in years, Ryan felt weightless, not because the guilt was gone, but because it finally had somewhere to rest. He turned toward the small memorial at the edge of the field, a smooth stone etched with the words, Cooper, loyalty beyond fear. Beneath it, a small paw print pressed into the concrete. Ryan knelt, resting his hand against it. You kept your promise, buddy, he whispered. Now it's my turn. In the distance, Lily called out, Ryan, come see. He stood brushing off his hands and walked toward her. The sun was dipping low, painting the sky in gold and amber. The puppies chased her across the grass, their shadows stretching long behind them. For a brief moment, everything, the fire, the guilt, the years of silence felt far away. This was what Cooper had seen in him all along. Not the soldier, not the sinner. The man who could still choose to protect. As the last light of the day settled over the valley, Ryan lifted his gaze to the horizon and smiled. We're home, buddy, he murmured to the wind. For good this time. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss the next one. Tell me in the comments what part moved you the most. And where in the world are you watching from? I'd love to know your thoughts and stories.